So I get recommended a lot of secret society guys and, disinformation agents. Everything I'm recommended these days is either trying to put me, in the fold of someone else's fold, under someone else's control, under someone else's hierarchy, or flat out disinformation, but it's usually both. And all the groups I see that actively recruit especially are, controlled opposition. They're talking about black masons. This one guy sent a video, African guy too, talking as above, so below. Very typical Masonic, philosophy. I want nothing to do with Freemasonry. I want nothing to do with any other group. I'm not a groupie. I'm not a controlled opposition bitch. I never will be. And because of the massive amount of stuff like this I get, I say, look, I'm going to block any links or any recommendations. I'm not interested in what anyone else has to say anymore. I'm only interested in my own research and getting my own message out. So yeah, now that the drugs kind of worn off a little bit, I can think more rationally. One thing they do is they constantly interrupt what you're trying to do. It's the same thing they really do with ISIS, except for it's for all political dissidents, not just terrorists. The disruption is the main part. Harass, disrupt, keep an eye on, stalk, surveillance, watch. But yeah, you can really tell in that last video that I was very drugged, and no, I don't make any apologies for it. Even calm, I agree with everything I said in that video. It was well said. It makes a lot more sense than people who are sober. That's one thing I noticed about my videos, that people are better off following me on my most drugged up days than they are following controlled opposition. No matter how cool they dress, no matter how cool they sound, street credibility, mainstream credibility mean nothing. When you're truly a revolutionary, you see that America has a powerful propaganda machine, and they control alternative media for the most part as well. So there's no escaping the kind of system and the overall propaganda agenda. So the smart thing to do is to do research and constantly fact check. You have to always look at things and try to figure out what people are motivated by. And it becomes very obvious in 99% of the cases. It's extremely obvious. For me, in 100% of the cases, it's obvious because I've been doing this for a long time. You can see, oh, this guy, he leans right and he's in this kind of conservative conspiracy movement. He's a white nationalist. You'll see this guy, he's a Jew, and he's kind of talking about what these Jews from that perspective talk about, controlled. This guy, he's kind of talking about Masonic philosophy. These guys aren't going to talk about things in a way that is truly effective. They're not going to, and they're almost always going to talk about Masonic philosophy. One thing the Masons do incessantly, obsessively, is that they propagate their textbook Masonic philosophy. And there'll be certain key phrases that even the most basic and new Freemason can understand, and understand that it is Freemasonry that they're referring to, such as above, so below. I mean, textbook. When you see things like, talking about a collective consciousness, God consciousness, you see dabbling in different religions. There's certain things that really give it away. Anything that makes the rich look good, or people who are seen as intellectuals in mainstream society look good, anything that reinforces the order of society, including the order of, the conspiracy theorist movement, if you will, anything that reinforces the order is textbook corporate philosophy. Anything that makes rich people look good or doesn't insult them enough. It doesn't take away from their respect enough. Anytime they describe things in a way that allows a lot of people to say, oh, those crooks are smart, instead of be disgusted by them. I mean, if you're not disgusted by big corporations and you don't express that, you really got to wonder why. Why wouldn't they, express things in a way that truly makes the corporate crooks look like the scum they are? And why wouldn't they expose the New World Order philosophy? Anything that has to do with spiritual bottom feeding, Satanism, paganism, the worst criminals, the LGBT philosophies, the feminists, the atheists, agnostics, racists, anything to do with that, and from that angle, or not exposing those people as corporate shills, is textbook Freemasonry, textbook controlled opposition. I mean, there's certain things that give it away very powerfully. Any attempt to organize and to compromise with mainstream movements, textbook controlled opposition. I mean, and it's really obvious who they are. And if you have any questions and you want to say, well, what do you think this guy? I wouldn't recommend my enemies to try to figure out what I think about them by sending a third person, because I'm going to tell you what I actually think about them. There's some people that I have some respect for, but I know they're shills, and I simply don't speak on them based on that. But I've given you all the tools you need to see who they are. And I'll go as far as to say, another thing that gives it away is views. If you see someone with 1 million fucking views, they're a shill. They've been allowed to get that far. You see someone with 100,000 views, almost certainly a shill. Even 50,000 views. As soon as you see more than 10,000 or so views, you really got to wonder why they're being allowed to spread their message on a New World Order social media site. That to me is another dead giveaway. Because it's very easy for these people to blacklist and so on. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a complete sellout, but they're almost certainly controlled opposition, such as a gay rights activist who talks about corporate America and Satanism, right? They're still pushing the LGBT movement. They're trying to make it seem like the gay agenda isn't all on the New World Order side, when it is. I've come across a lot of these LGBT people who, they go the distance trying to prove that they're not with corporate America, but they are. Their interests align with corporate America. That's the problem with all these movements I've talked about, all these schools of thought. As soon as you are pushing that politically, your interests align with corporate America. And that's what they're doing first and foremost. There's very few gay people who are politically active who aren't concerned with pushing the gay agenda. You can't have one foot, on one side of the line and say you're on the other. As soon as you take any New World Order philosophy and you publicize it, you are automatically with them. It doesn't matter if you know how I feel about everything, but you're a gay rights activist. You're with them. It doesn't matter if you know how I feel about everything, but you're a black Freemason. You're with them. And so on. And when you really slice this thing correctly, you're going to see that 99% of people plus are with the 1%. They're either directly controlled or they've adopted and taken on a controlled opposition philosophy. When you really look at how it's sliced, the flag waving Americans, what is Americanism if not Freemasonry? Straight from the Age of Enlightenment. So when it's like waving a Masonic flag. And that's basically what America is. It is a Masonic flag. I've seen Jordan Maxwell, though he's a shill, mind you. He rolls with the satanic movement guys, He praises Manly P. Hall and Madame Blavatsky, dead giveaway. But anyway, he's right that America is like a corporation. So waving the American flag is just like waving the flag of, the United Corporations of America. That's really how it is. There's a lot of people in the patriot movement and stuff, they don't understand that what it means to be a patriot is to follow the Constitution, which says the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution. You can cry about it all you want, but when you say you're an American, America is a nation with a set of rules, and the Constitution is key to that, and it says that the government interprets the Constitution. So at the end of the day, you know, when you look at this whole thing, there's not too many people who are doing the right thing. Politics is a very dirty game where there's probably 1 million people doing the wrong thing for every one that's doing the right thing. You know, and I'm not talking about just politicians, obviously. I'm talking about everybody who's politically active. Protesters, people who post political posts on their social media. There's about 1 million people in America doing the wrong thing for every one person doing the right thing who's politically active. So let's say there's 200 million Americans who are politically active, right? There's probably about 200 of us who are actually sincere, who aren't conditioned to the point where we're helping the Masons and them do what they're trying to do. And it is like that. I've been in this politics stuff for a long time. I've observed it from different angles. I've studied it. I've interviewed tons of people. I know for sure that that's how it is. There's no way I could be wrong about this. When you just look at the average person, right? Even the controlled opposition calls them sheep, you know, because they're doing what they're told. They're indirectly controlled. So when the sheep get politically active, do you really think they're on my side or something? That's stupid. Of course they're on their side. They're a controlled opposition bitch. They're a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, Green Party. There's some controlled opposition person, right? A communist and so on. Now, very few transcend. That's why I say resist, defy, and transcend. Don't conform to controlled opposition philosophies or movements. And one thing you also see in my videos is no matter how drugged up I am, my message is consistent. I might be more angry and more harsh, but I'm saying the same thing. You know, I might go as far as say I'm talking about this racial group instead of using a word that gives me a lot of plausible deniability. But my message is consistent. My tone and my delivery depends on how much I'm drugged. And you see me articulate myself very well when I'm angry with not too much drugs in my system. Not too many drugs in my system. You know, but times like right now, when I'm kind of recovering, I give a kind of mediocre presentation. And the worst presentations, hands down, is when I'm drugged. But like I said, I'll always make what they're doing blow up in their faces. So you see that I'm drugged in the video. There's no mistake in that. I'm like, look, I'm drugged. It's like you see the behavior change. It's consistent with when I ate. You know, and there's no anxiety related to it. There's no, oh my God, it might be drugged, because I honestly don't know when the food's going to be drugged and when it isn't. I've been to places that drug me almost every time and have, you know, went at the right time and it wasn't drugged. I've been to places like Subway that never drugged me before. I get the lemonade, which I get fairly often, and it was drugged that day. So there's no, oh my goodness, I think I'm drugged, and oh, I'm drugged. You know, it's like, and the same thing with the food in the house. I've eaten food here and I wasn't drugged. And I've eaten food other times and I was drugged. So there's no way I could be mistaken about that either. And then, of course, there's the experiment. I overkill, overkill, overkill. All these points need to be overkilled. It's kind of like you go to a traditional martial arts you know, school, right? And, you know, they have their way, I have my way, first of all. You can't judge me by them, and I'm going to block anyone who tries. Anyway, and they're telling you, oh, don't, you know, you keep letting your guard down, right? Some things need to be said over and over again for people to learn effectively and to grow effectively. You know, America keeps letting their guard down about this spiritual bottom feeder thing. You might know it, but you're not behaving in a way that reflects that knowledge. Those groups of people are spiritual bottom feeders. Nothing good can come from that. It's like being a pedophile, right? Even if the New World Order wasn't pushing that, it still wouldn't be in your best interest. It's still bad for humanity. It just becomes obvious that it's bad for humanity when a bunch of fucking Satanists who are doing eugenics on everyone are pushing it. And some of you are so dumb that it took them pushing it for you to see that it was wrong. There was Christians like me who knew it was wrong, since they were little kids. And then there's dumbasses who think that the gay agenda is harmless. And then one day they snap out of it and say, you know what? It is weird that the Satanists are pushing that. Why would they do that? And then you connect it to eugenics and gays, rich gays trying to turn people out, and the gay prostitution, gay human trafficking, and so on. Because women aren't the only ones who are human trafficked. Young boys are, even men. That's why it's called human traffic, not, female trafficking or women trafficking. Anyway, so when you truly look at this thing, man, you got to see it for what it is. You got to see controlled opposition for what it is. In my opinion, as much as some of them, are pretty cool guys, they're very evil guys too, because they're taking the opposition and they're controlling it. They're helping them. They're like the agents they send behind enemy lines, the wolves in sheep's clothes, to trick you into not fighting back effectively. And so, I would hope that you wouldn't join any mainstream group. There isn't any large group in America that I believe is uncontrolled. That's the truth of it. If there was, I would join them. But no, I'm never going to be convinced to the contrary. I've seen too many gang stalkers. I've seen too many liars, too many trolls. I've seen too much money spent on controlling the opposition.